My client slid the photo across the table like it was just another job. I looked down, and my whole body went cold. Because the woman laughing in that picture, leaning a little too close to another man, wasn't just a stranger. She was my wife. And in that moment, I wasn't sure what hurt more. The possibility that she was cheating. Or the fear that I'd already lost her long before that photo was taken. The afternoon felt ordinary in the way life-altering moments always do. I was sitting across from a new client in a quiet cafe downtown, the kind with soft jazz playing overhead and sunlight pouring through tall windows, warming the wooden tables. The air smelled like roasted espresso beans and fresh pastries. Outside, people passed by in a blur of routine, unaware that my world was about to tilt off its axis. She introduced herself calmly. Early 40s, composed, wedding ring visible. Her fingers were steady as she reached into her leather folder. "I need you to confirm something for me," she said. I nodded, slipping into professional mode, observant, detached, careful. Then she slid a photograph across the table. It moved slowly over the polished wood, the faint scraping sound louder than it should have been. I reached for it without thinking, fingertips brushing the glossy edge. At first, I only saw shapes. A restaurant patio. Evening light. Two figures seated across from each other. Then my eyes focused. And everything inside me froze. The woman in the picture was laughing softly, her head tilted slightly to the side in a way I knew by heart. Her hair fell over one shoulder, the same way it did when I used to brush it back before we left for dinner. She was wearing a cream blouse I'd once teased her about because it made her look dangerously elegant. My throat tightened. It was my wife. She looked beautiful. Effortlessly so. Early 40s, confident, radiant in that quiet way that doesn't beg for attention but always receives it. There was a softness in her expression, something open, something warm. And she was leaning forward. Not in a scandalous way. Not touching him. But close enough. Close enough that I knew this wasn't accidental. The man across from her looked engaged, focused entirely on her. His posture mirrored hers, elbows near the table, head slightly inclined, like he didn't want to miss a single word. My fingers went numb against the paper. The client's voice drifted toward me as if through water. "I believe my husband is seeing her. I just need proof." Proof. The word landed like a stone in my chest. I couldn't breathe properly. My pulse thudded loudly in my ears, drowning out the music, the clinking cups, the murmur of strangers. I forced myself to blink, to examine the image the way I would any other assignment. The timestamp in the corner showed last week. Last week. That was the night she'd told me she had a late meeting. I remembered kissing her cheek before she left, my hand resting at her waist for a moment longer than usual. She'd smiled, distracted, but gentle. I'd watched her walk out the door, heels clicking confidently down the hallway. I hadn't questioned it. Because I trusted her. I still did. "Didn't I? Can you take the case?" the client asked quietly. Her eyes searched my face, unaware she was asking me to investigate my own marriage. For a split second, I considered telling her the truth. That the woman in the photo was my wife. That this wasn't professional for me. That I couldn't possibly remain objective. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I heard myself say, steady and calm, "Yes. I'll look into it." The sentence tasted bitter. As I slid the photo back toward her, my reflection faintly overlapped with my wife's image on the glossy surface, my face ghosted beside hers. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about whether she was cheating. It was about the quiet possibility that I hadn't noticed her slipping away. And I didn't know which truth would hurt more. That night, I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling while the city hummed faintly beyond our bedroom window. She was on her side, facing away from me. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her body through the sheets, but not touching. It hadn't always been like that. There was a time when she used to curl into me without thinking, her back against my chest, my arm naturally finding its place around her waist. She'd lace her fingers with mine absent-mindedly before drifting off, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Now there was space. Not much. Just a few inches. But it felt like miles. I turned my head slightly and studied her silhouette in the dim light. Even at 42, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that drew attention without trying. The curve of her shoulder under the thin fabric of her nightshirt, the elegant line of her neck, the way her hair spilled across the pillow like dark silk. She was beautiful. Gracefully. Effortlessly. And suddenly, painfully, distant. The scent of her perfume lingered faintly in the air, something warm and soft with hints of vanilla. I used to associate it with comfort. Lately, it felt like a reminder of how often she wasn't home. Late meeting, she'd say, brushing a kiss against my cheek instead of my lips. I hadn't thought much of it at first. She had a demanding career. She was established long before I found my footing. I'd always admired that about her, the way she walked into rooms with certainty, the way people listened when she spoke. But somewhere along the way, admiration turned into something quieter. Insecurity. I remembered a dinner party a few months ago. One of her friends had laughed lightly and said, "You're lucky to have such a young husband." It was meant as a compliment. But I saw the flicker in her eyes. That night, as we got ready for bed, she stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. Adjusting her blouse. Smoothing her hair. Studying her reflection with an expression I couldn't read. I'd stepped behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist, resting my chin on her shoulder. "You look incredible," I whispered. She smiled, soft, grateful. But not convinced. Now, lying beside her, I wondered how many small moments I'd overlooked. The way her laughter had grown quieter over the past few weeks. The way she'd pull her hand away just a little sooner when we sat on the couch together. The way she sometimes seemed lost in thought when I talked about future plans, like she wasn't sure she fit into them. Had I been too focused on building my career? On proving to the world that I deserved her? I'd always known people talked about us, the age gap, the assumptions. I told myself I didn't care. But maybe, deep down, I tried so hard to look strong that I forgot to look at her. She shifted slightly in her sleep, her hand drifting back until her fingers brushed against mine. It was a small touch. Accidental. But my chest tightened at the contact. Instinctively, I turned my palm upward and gently laced our fingers together. For a moment, she responded, her grip tightening faintly before relaxing again. Even now, there was still something there. That's what made the photo hurt so much. Not because I believed she was capable of betrayal. But because I was starting to wonder if she'd been feeling alone, right beside me. And I hadn't noticed until someone else did. I told myself I was taking the case for professional reasons. Experience. Reputation. Objectivity. But the truth was far less noble. I needed to see it with my own eyes. 3 days later, I found myself parked across the street from a softly lit restaurant downtown. The same one from the photo. Evening had settled into that golden hour where everything looks warmer than it really is. Streetlights flickered on, casting pale halos against the pavement. My hands rested on the steering wheel, but they didn't feel like mine. Through the wide front windows, I spotted her almost immediately. She was sitting near the glass, back straight, posture elegant as always. A navy dress hugged her frame in a way that was refined, not flashy. She wore her hair down tonight, smooth and deliberate, like she'd taken extra time with it. My chest tightened. She looked nervous. Not guilty. Not flirtatious. Nervous. The man from the photograph joined her a minute later. Mid-40s, maybe. Confident, but not overly polished. He smiled when he saw her, familiar, comfortable. Too comfortable. I watched as he pulled out the chair across from her. She thanked him with that same soft smile I'd fallen in love with years ago. I forced myself to breathe. This was part of the job. Observe. Don't react. Inside, they talked. At first, their conversation looked casual. She leaned in slightly to hear him over the ambient noise. He spoke with animated hands. She laughed once, light, but not loud. That laugh pierced me. It wasn't the sound itself. It was the realization that I hadn't heard it like that in weeks. My fingers curled tighter around the steering wheel. I considered walking in. Confronting them. Ending the suspense. But something stopped me. Instead, I stepped out of the car and crossed the street, choosing a table outside within view of the window. Close enough to see their expressions. Far enough to remain unnoticed. The night air was cool against my skin, grounding me. I ordered a drink I didn't plan to touch. Inside, their body language shifted. He leaned forward, elbows near the table. She mirrored him, not seductively, but attentively. There was intensity in the way she listened. Then something unexpected happened. Her expression softened, and then faltered. Her smile faded just slightly. Her eyes lowered. For a moment, she looked vulnerable, not glowing, not exhilarated, but unsure. He reached across the table. My heart slammed against my ribs. But he didn't grab her hand. He only let his fingers rest near hers. Close. Not touching. And she didn't move toward him. She hesitated. That hesitation mattered. I leaned forward, my breath fogging faintly in the evening chill. The restaurant's warm light cast a golden outline around her profile. She looked beautiful, yes, but more than that, she looked conflicted. Like someone standing at the edge of a decision they weren't sure they wanted to make. A wave of emotion hit me, not anger. Fear. Fear that she had found something in that conversation she couldn't find with me. Or worse. Fear that she had been trying to find it with me, and I hadn't seen it. As if sensing something, she turned her head slightly toward the window. Her eyes scanned the street briefly. For a split second, I thought she saw me. My pulse froze. But her gaze moved past, distracted. Still, something in her expression lingered, like she felt watched. Or weighed down. The man said something that made her inhale sharply. She nodded slowly, lips pressed together. No touching. No obvious betrayal. Just closeness. And sometimes closeness is louder than contact. I sat there long after they stood to leave. He walked her to the corner. They paused under the streetlight. There was a moment. A stillness. He leaned in slightly. And she stepped back. Small. Almost imperceptible. But clear. Relief and dread tangled together inside me. Because now I knew two things. She hadn't crossed the line. But she had been standing dangerously close to it. And I didn't know whether that made it better, or worse. The house was quiet when she got home. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The heavy kind. The kind that presses against your ears and makes every small movement sound louder than it should. I was sitting at the edge of the bed when she walked into the room, slipping off her heels with a tired exhale. She looked beautiful in the soft lamplight, composed, graceful, every movement controlled. But there was tension in her shoulders, the kind you only notice when you've memorized someone's body language. Hey, she said gently, offering me a small smile. It was the same smile from the photo. My chest tightened. Hey, I replied, my voice steady, steadier than I felt. She moved to the dresser, removing her earrings slowly. One. Then the other. The faint metallic click as she set them down felt unnaturally loud. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the photograph. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I placed it on the nightstand between us. The sound of glossy paper against wood made her freeze. She didn't turn immediately. But I saw it, the way her spine straightened. The way her breathing changed. Slowly, she looked down. And when she saw the image, the color drained from her face. Silence filled the room. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Just still. Do you want to tell me who he is? I asked quietly. No accusation. No raised voice. Just the truth, sitting between us. Her fingers hovered over the photo before finally picking it up. They trembled, barely noticeable, but enough that I felt it in my own chest. She swallowed. He's an old friend, she said. The words sounded rehearsed, but not deceptive. Just fragile. I stood slowly, closing the small distance between us. Close enough to see the faint gloss in her eyes. An old friend you meet in secret? I asked, softer than I expected. She flinched at the word secret. I didn't know how to explain it, she whispered. There it was. Not denial. Not anger. Fear. She sat down on the edge of the bed, the photo still in her hands. I noticed how tightly she was holding it, like it might disappear. I felt, she hesitated, searching for the word. Invisible. That word hit harder than I expected. Invisible. I moved to sit beside her, not touching yet. Just close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her arm. How? I asked. Her laugh was small. Self-conscious. You're young, she said, finally looking at me. You're building your future. Your world is expanding. And sometimes I look at you and I wonder if one day you'll wake up and realize you deserve someone easier. The vulnerability in her voice stripped away every defensive thought I had. I didn't want to burden you with my insecurities, she continued. So I talked to someone who knew me before I started doubting myself. Before she started doubting herself. My throat tightened. You think I see you as a burden? I asked. She shook her head quickly. No. I'm aging. And I know people talk. I see it in their faces sometimes. I didn't want you to feel stuck with me. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back, determined not to cry. That quiet strength, the one I'd always admired, was cracking. I finally reached for her hand. When our fingers touched, it wasn't electric. It was grounding. Her skin was warm. Familiar. Real. Did you touch him? I asked, because I needed to know. She met my eyes immediately. No. Did you want to? A pause. Then, softly, I wanted to feel wanted. The honesty in that answer hurt. But it also healed something. Because for the first time in weeks, maybe months, we weren't pretending. We were just two people, sitting on the edge of a bed, scared of losing each other. And finally saying it out loud. Her words didn't echo in the room. They settled. I wanted to feel wanted. Not desired in some reckless, fleeting way. Just seen. I stayed beside her on the edge of the bed, close enough that our shoulders brushed. The contact was light, but it sent a quiet steadiness through me. For weeks, we'd been orbiting each other carefully, politely. Now there was no space for pretending. You are wanted, I said, but even as I said it, I realized something. I hadn't been saying it enough. She let out a fragile breath, staring down at the photograph still resting in her lap. When he looks at me, she admitted softly, he doesn't see the lines near my eyes. He doesn't see time. He just sees me. I reached over and gently took the photo from her hands, placing it face down on the nightstand. It didn't deserve to sit between us anymore. When I turned back to her, she looked smaller somehow, not physically, but emotionally. Vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. She was usually the confident one. The composed one. The woman who walked into rooms like she belonged there. Now she just looked like someone afraid of fading. I shifted closer, our knees touching fully now. The warmth of her skin through the thin fabric of her dress was grounding. You think I don't see you? I asked quietly. She hesitated. I think, she said carefully, that one day you might look at me and realize I'm not in the same season of life as you. There it was. Not infidelity. Fear. I lifted my hand slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't. My fingers brushed gently against her jaw, thumb resting just below her cheekbone. Her skin was warm, softer than I remembered in that moment, or maybe I was just paying attention differently. I don't love you because you're in the same season as me, I said. I love you because you know how to weather them. Her eyes glistened. I traced a loose strand of hair away from her face, tucking it behind her ear. The gesture felt intimate in its simplicity, more intimate than anything dramatic could have been. I've been insecure too, I admitted. That caught her off guard. You, she asked, almost whispering. I nodded, letting my hand fall to rest over hers. I laced our fingers together slowly, deliberately. Sometimes I feel like people assume I married you for stability. Or that I won't stay. Like I'm temporary. Her grip tightened. I hate that, she said instantly. I know. But I didn't want to sound weak. So instead, I focused on work. On proving something. And maybe I stopped proving things to you. A tear finally slipped down her cheek. This time, I wiped it away with my thumb before she could turn her face. You didn't cheat, I said gently. But you were lonely. She nodded. And I was distracted. Silence settled between us again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was honest. I ended it tonight, she said suddenly. Before I came home. I told him I can't blur lines I don't want to cross. My chest loosened in a way I hadn't realized it needed to. You chose me, I murmured. Her forehead rested against mine, our breaths mingling softly in the quiet room. I never stopped choosing you, she whispered. And in that closeness, knees pressed together, fingers intertwined, foreheads touching, I understood something deeply. The threat hadn't been another man. It had been silence. And we were finally breaking it. We stayed like that for a long time, foreheads resting together, hands intertwined, breathing the same quiet air. There was no dramatic music swelling in the background. No cinematic declaration. Just warmth. Just us. Her fingers were still laced with mine, and I felt the faint tremble in them begin to settle. My thumb brushed slowly over the back of her hand, a small, absent-minded motion, the kind that says I'm here without needing words. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. Her voice wasn't desperate. It wasn't pleading. It was certain. I leaned back just enough to look at her fully. The lamplight softened the fine lines near her eyes, the ones she'd been so afraid of. I traced one gently with my fingertip. I don't love you in spite of time, I said quietly. I love you because of it. Her lips parted slightly at that, emotion flickering across her face. I could see the shift happening, the doubt loosening its grip. I lifted her hand and pressed a slow kiss against her knuckles. Not dramatic. Just deliberate. Her breath hitched softly at the contact. I should have told you when I felt insecure, she admitted. Instead of trying to fix it alone. And I should have noticed sooner, I replied. She moved closer until there was no space left between us. Her knee slid over mine, her free hand coming to rest lightly against my chest. I felt the warmth of her palm through my shirt, steady and grounding. Do you still trust me? She asked. The question was fragile. I didn't answer immediately, not to punish her, but because trust deserved honesty. I do, I said finally. But we rebuild it together. Not quietly. Not separately. She nodded quickly. I blocked his number. I told him not to contact me again. I searched her face for hesitation. There wasn't any. Relief didn't explode inside me, it settled. Slow and steady, like something falling back into place. I reached up and brushed my fingers through her hair, letting the strand slip between them. She leaned into the touch instinctively, eyes closing for a second. That simple reaction broke something open in me. I wrapped my arm around her waist and gently pulled her into me. She came without resistance, her body fitting against mine in that familiar way that suddenly felt new again. Her cheek rested against my shoulder. I felt her exhale there, warm, shaky, but calmer than before. "I don't want us to become careful with each other," she murmured. "We won't," I promised. I tilted my head and pressed a lingering kiss to her temple. She turned slightly, and our lips brushed, soft, tentative at first. Not urgent. Not hungry. Reassuring. It wasn't about passion in that moment. It was about recognition. Her fingers curled lightly into the fabric of my shirt as if anchoring herself. Mine rested securely at the small of her back, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing. "We talk," I said against her forehead. "Even when it's uncomfortable." "Especially then." She nodded. "And maybe," she added gently, "we remind each other a little more often." A small smile tugged at my mouth. "I can do that." We stayed seated on the edge of the bed, wrapped around each other, not rushing to move forward. Because this, the choosing, mattered more than anything else. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was losing her. I felt like we were finding each other again. Morning light spilled softly through the curtains, pale gold and forgiving. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I just listened. The quiet hum of the refrigerator. The faint clink of ceramic in the kitchen. The scent of coffee drifting down the hallway. She was awake. I rolled onto my side, reaching across the bed out of habit. My hand met cool sheets, but instead of panic, there was calm. Last night hadn't been a dream. I followed the warmth of the light into the kitchen. She stood by the counter in one of my oversized shirts, sleeves rolled up, hair loose around her shoulders. The fabric brushed against her bare legs as she moved. She looked comfortable. Unarmored. For the first time in a while, she didn't look like she was bracing for something. She glanced up when she heard my footsteps. And smiled. Not the polite, distracted smile from recent weeks. A real one. Soft and steady. "Morning," she said. I crossed the room slowly, as if approaching something fragile, not because she was, but because this moment felt delicate in the best way. When I reached her, I didn't speak. I simply wrapped my arms around her waist from behind. She inhaled sharply at first, then melted back into me. Her back fit against my chest like it always had. Familiar. Certain. My chin rested lightly against her shoulder. I felt the warmth of her skin, the subtle rise and fall of her breath. Her hands came to rest over mine, fingers threading gently through my knuckles. We stood there like that for a long moment. No tension. No questions. Just presence. "I meant what I said," she murmured softly. "About choosing you." I pressed a slow kiss just below her ear. "I know." She turned in my arms then, facing me fully. Up close in the morning light, I could see everything she'd been afraid of, the faint lines near her eyes, the softness of time written gently across her features. And I'd never found her more beautiful. She lifted her hand and brushed her thumb across my cheek, studying me the same way. "You're not going anywhere," she said quietly. It wasn't a question this time. "No," I answered. We moved to the small kitchen table with our coffee. Our knees touched beneath it, neither of us pulling away. The sunlight warmed our hands where they rested side by side on the wood. "I think we should talk to someone," she said after a moment. "Not because we're broken. But because I don't ever want silence to grow like that again." I nodded. "We don't wait until things crack." She reached for my hand then, not absent-mindedly. Intentionally. Her fingers intertwined with mine, squeezing once. "I was scared of becoming less in your life," she admitted. "You're not less," I said. "You're home." Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't look away this time. Outside, the world carried on like nothing had happened. Cars passed. Neighbors walked their dogs. Life was ordinary again. But something inside our walls had shifted. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just, firmly. Love across an age gap isn't fragile. It just demands honesty louder than fear. And as we sat there, hands intertwined in the morning light, I realized something simple and certain: she hadn't been slipping away. We had just forgotten to hold on out loud. And now we were.